There are a lot of people who are unfortunately convicted of crimes that they didn't commit and are penalized for that. And our system should do something to cure that if they can. Somebody gets thrown in jail for something he didn't do, that's pretty much of a tragedy. And as a trial lawyer, as a plaintiff's lawyer, we are hired to right civil wrongs. That's a civil wrong. So I'm a fourth generation Lincolnite. My great-grandfather came over here from Poland in the late 1870s, early 1880s, settled in Lincoln, and the family's been here ever since. When I was in high school, I took a course in business law, and that sort of tripped my trigger, and that's what started me on my road. Served 2 years in the Army as a Judge Advocate General's officer, and then returned to Lincoln in the fall of 1962, it'll be 59 years ago, and I opened up my own office.
Herb has had a very long and very successful career, and he has helped a lot of people in a lot of different ways. We are just so grateful that he has chosen to take up this fight for the two clients that he did, and that he has been an ally to the Midwest Innocence Project and to wrongful convictions and innocence work in general.
Darrell was a graduate of the School of Forestry of Iowa State. He was just a kind of an all-American boy, really. Came from a prosperous farm family, and comes home one day at noon and finds his wife dead. They squeezed a confession out of him after 11 hours. He recanted it the next morning. He didn't even know what happened to him. He was really dead there. That time it was too late. He'd signed a confession, and they said, "To hell with it. We're going to prosecute him anyway."
So I think it's interesting that both of the cases Herb was involved in were basically largely based on false confessions. They are one of the most common causes of wrongful conviction in the United States. I think they're actually the third most common cause. And yet people still have a really hard time wrapping their head around the idea that someone could ever confess to a crime they hadn't committed.
When I was a second-year student at the University of Nebraska, I was going to go to law school in my third year. They were trying that case, and I went down and I watched it as a young college sophomore. He served about 17 years, and then he was paroled. And then Nebraska passed a statute for wrongful conviction. In the Nebraska statute that permits recovery of damages, you have to have a pardon. It's not just enough that your conviction was overturned. You have to be pardoned by the State Pardon Board. From that pardon, you can then file a lawsuit against the state to collect damages. There's a maximum of $500,000. And he contacted me, and we went from there.
These cases shed a light on that issue, which is much more prevalent than people think, as unfathomable as it seems. That's part of the value in what Herb is doing, in bringing attention to these issues as one of the main underlying causes of wrongful conviction.
Attorney General at that time held a press conference, and he said, we were wrong. We apologize for this on behalf of the people of the state of Nebraska. Unheard of. Rarely does that ever happen.
Now I can die in peace, because I'll no longer have this burden of fighting this case.
So I learned about the Beatrice 6 case originally in 2006 when Herb Friedman came to the Law College to talk about the case as part of a panel on wrongful convictions.
Raping and murdering a 68-year-old woman in her apartment on the coldest night of the year in 1985, February. We have no idea how they ended up in prison. These were 6 people who were just average, ordinary folks.
5 of the 6 individuals falsely confessed. That includes James Dean, who was Herb's client.
James had denied this. They had no idea why they'd arrested him. Out of a clear blue sky, 5 years after this thing happened. They tossed him in a jail cell. He was there for 22 days.
When they first arrested me, they were threatening me with an electric chair and all this stuff. And that was my only option, or at least I thought it was my only option.
Ultimately, the 6 individuals were all released from prison and exonerated in 2008 to 2009.
And there were like 16 judges that looked at that case, and all of them eventually thought that these people deserved to be compensated.
So in 2016, a jury awarded the Beatrice Six $28 million in a federal civil rights lawsuit that they had brought against Gage County, which is the county where they were convicted.
They're still paying the judgment. The county is still paying the judgment. So much every year. They had to raise the property taxes.
The money's not gonna bring back what I lost. It's just like a relief off my shoulders to know that everybody now knows that I wasn't guilty of this charge. It tells me that there's people out there that care about other people more than themselves, and that they're fighting to make sure that justice is served in the right way.
And it was interesting that when that happened to Darrell, he was 24 years old. When it happened to James Dean, he was 24 years old. They were both the same age. In the case of James, he was a high school dropout. And it took 22 days before they cracked him on that case. With Darrell was 11 hours. And he was a college graduate. So it didn't make much difference what your education was or your background was. If they wanted to get a confession, they were going to get a confession. And that's kind of what they did.
Since that time, the case has been widely covered both locally and nationally. That's important because we should be hearing about these things, and we should be talking about these things, because that will be one of the things that prevents it from happening again.
There was times that I said this case is never going to come down to trial or nothing, and I just pretty much gave up. Herb said, no, you can't give up. You have to keep fighting.
Well, I'm proud that we were able to succeed on his behalf. Made a difference in his life and the lives of the other people too.
I really give Herb a lot of credit, and the civil suit that they pursued on behalf of the Beatrice Six, a lot of credit in really thrusting this case back into the spotlight, which is where it should be.
Well, I'm very honored that the project did this. I was surprised and very honored, and it's probably one of the nicest things that's happened to me, I think.
We are so happy to have him doing that work in any capacity, and I hope that it does inspire other people to do what they can in whatever capacity they can, because there's a lot of ways that you can contribute in a meaningful way in the context of wrongful convictions.